here we have a whiteboard where I will show you so many SAT strategies and SAT questions so that you can ace your exam. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this is a 2-hour SAT reading masterclass, and you're gonna learn so much in this masterclass. And there are two things that we will do, which is firstly, we will explore one strategy that can be applied for most SAT reading questions. And we will also do some practice with different question types on the SAT reading section. And I will also give you tips in order to solve those questions. So firstly, let's explore that one strategy. And it's so simple. Reading the question first, identifying the question type, reading the passage carefully, predicting, and selecting the right answer choice. And it was something that I should have said, even though it's a little basic, but now let's dive in. So we will start off with practice with question types, and I will give it. So firstly, let's explore main idea questions. Well, main idea questions require you to have a bit of a unique strategy, which is firstly, you need to identify the general topic first. That is the number one thing that you're going to do. Next up, you will go broad, you'll go specific, and your kind of prediction for answer choices is going to be way more specific. And here's the thing, you should look for contrast, arguments, or position. And when you do practice with this question type, you will understand how to apply this thing, like identifying whether it's a contrast or whether there is an argument or position. And here's the SAT question. Now, like before we go into this SAT question, I should tell you one important thing, which is one trap that a lot of students fall into. And that is choosing an answer just because it has words that are in the passage. Don't be confused by that. Now let's move on to the question. So here you have it. Here's the passage and here are the answer choices. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own first. So let's read the text. So it asks for the main idea. Observations of distant galaxies reveal that the light emitted from them is often redshifted. So now we know the general topic, which is a light, like redshifted light. That's the general topic, meaning the wavelengths of the light are stretched, making them appear redder than they should be. And there's also this Doppler effect where the sound of an ambulance siren lowers in pitch as it moves away from an observer. Astronomers use the amount of redshift in a galaxy's light to estimate its velocity relative to Earth. Galaxies with larger redshifts are moving away from us at higher speeds, providing evidence for the expansion of the universe. So my prediction is that those redshift can allow those distant galaxies to expand on the universe. So that is my prediction. Now let's move on to choices. Choice A, redshift is a phenomenon that affects the color of light emitted from distant galaxies. Well, it's partially correct, but it's a little too narrow. Yes, that is true. The thing that is true is that redshift makes light appear redder. That is exactly true, but the passage isn't just about color changes. It's about using redshift as evidence for the expansion of the universe. So this is not the best choice here because it has some parts that are a little bit off. So that's why A is wrong. Choice B, astronomers use the Doppler effect to estimate the distance of galaxies from Earth. Well, the passage, yes, said that astronomers use redshift. But it doesn't say that astronomers use the Doppler effect to estimate velocity. The Doppler effect is mentioned only as a comparison here. It's not the main focus, so it shifts the main focus of the passage. That's why B is also wrong. Choice C, the amount of redshift in a galaxy's light provides evidence for the expansion of the universe. That's a perfect choice. Like, this is the main idea of the passage. Redshifts helps prove that the universe is expanding. So it covers the most important part of the passage. That's why C is the correct answer. Choice D, the sound of an ambulance siren changes pitch as it moves away from an observer due to the Doppler effect. Well, it's something that is completely off topic. The ambulance siren is just an example to help explain redshift, and it's not the main focus of the passage here. That's why D is also wrong. Now, let's move on to the. So in this case, the general topic was redshift, and our prediction, as I told, was redshift is important because it helps astronomers understand that the universe is expanding. Now let's move on to the next type of a main idea question. And in this type, we have a poem. And sometimes you might actually expect a poem on your exam. So firstly, let's read the poem. I wish I had paid attention to the first signs, the first whispers of change in the air. If the skies were darker or the rivers ran dry, it might have been subtle for all I can say. So unnoticed did it slip away. So blind was I to the shifts around me, so dull to mark the falling of the leaves that warned of storms in coming days. Well, the poem here shows or describes how the speaker failed to notice early signs of that environmental change. As you can see, storms here. That means there is an environmental change. They also mentioned that those signs are subtle, were subtle, and but they were really significant, and they regret not realizing the importance of those changes earlier. And I believe that the speaker is kind of reflecting on how those environmental warning signs go unnoticed until it's too late. So yeah, so they're regretting over not noticing environmental changes earlier. Now let's look at choices. Choice A. The speaker reflects on how changes in nature often go unnoticed until their consequences become severe. Well, that's a great choice. I like this choice because this matches our prediction. And the speaker talks about missing early warning signs. That is exactly what the point was about. So I guess that's the correct answer choice. But still, let's have a look at others. Choice B. Because the speaker was unaware of the early signs of environmental change, they now struggle to understand the impact. I guess it's too specific for this main idea question, and the speaker regrets not noticing the signs, but the passage doesn't say they struggle to understand the impact now. So that's why B is wrong. Choice C is a new environmental crisis looms. The speaker debates the best way to respond and take action. Well, it's completely off topic, right? That's an example of a choice which is off topic, and you can literally eliminate these choices really easily. It doesn't mention a future crisis and nothing about taking action, so C is completely wrong. Choice D. After years of disregarding the environment, the speaker worries it may be too late to reverse the damage. Well, I guess it's too extreme. That's an example of a choice that shows a too extreme trap. The passage doesn't say the speaker actively disregarded the environment and just that they didn't notice the changes. So that's why D is wrong because of that. Now let's move on to the next question type, which is main purpose. Well, something that I should tell you is that main purpose is not a main idea. So yeah, that is something that you should definitely understand. And here we have a question that I've created, and you can pause the video now. You can solve it. So now, they're asking for the main purpose. Let's read the passage. In the early 1900s, pioneering filmmaker began creating movies that depicted the experiences of Black Americans, challenging prevailing stereotypes in mainstream Hollywood. So there is a filmmaker, and he makes movies to show the experiences of Black Americans. Yep. His films, including those, addressed issues. So, what are those issues? Such as racial injustice, economic struggles, and migration. So his work paves the way for future generations of Black filmmakers and remain a subject of scholarly study. So this passage talks about that filmmaker, his films, and his impact on Black American cinema, I guess. Yeah. Now let's move on to answer choices. Choice A, to discuss the impact of an influential filmmaker. I guess that's a correct answer choice because that was the exact same thing that the passage talked about. They talked about is his impact. As you can see, it also remained a subject of scholarly study. So let's keep A. Choice B, to explain how silent films were made. Well, this passage isn't about the process of making those silent films, so we can literally eliminate this choice. Choice C, to compare the works of two early Black directors. Well, there is only one filmmaker discussed in this passage, so we can literally eliminate it. To describe the difficulties of filming on location, well, the passage doesn't even mention it, so we can literally eliminate D as well, so A is the best choice here. And now let's move on to the next question type here, which is function questions. As you can see, uh, I should tell you most common like before doing that, let's move on. Let's look at this question. This is how function questions look like. There is a one sentence that is underlined, and you should identify the function of that underlined portion. Before we go into that question, you need to know common function types. So the first type is meaning or explanation. That is, there might be some claim, and the next sentence, the underlined part, could explain it. So that's an example of meaning or explanation function type. Next up, we have study structure. And if the underlying part talks about the structure, how they like did that study, then that it could be a study structure function type. It could also be clarification of a prior concept. It could clarify, and it could firstly tell that concept, a brand new concept, and then it could clarify it. It could explain it. It could also link concept. It could also show results. It could illustrate, or it could give examples. It could also summarize or conclude. Now let's move on to the question. So yep, let's read this passage. Architectural theorists have examined how postmodern architecture, and now the underlined part begins, a design movement that emerged as a reaction against the rigid simplicity of modernist architecture, emphasizing complexity, historical references, and playful ornamentation, challenges the dominant architectural trends of that century. Meanwhile, so that person has explored how architects blended modern ideals with regional influences to create diverse designs. However, so here we have a shift in the passage. The extent to which postmodern architecture opposed modernist versus adapted its principles remains debated, leading him to analyze both perspectives in his book. So the underlying portion here defines postmodern architecture, and it kind of describes its key characteristics. And the rest of the passage is like kind of it discusses how scholars studied those postmodern architecture, and it also has a shift here. And it says there is an ongoing debate about its relationship to modernism. So yeah, and we can now move on to answer choices. Choice A, it provides examples of how a movement was studied by scholars before that person's work. Well, the underlying portion doesn't even mention previous studies. So that's why we can eliminate choice A. Choice B, it gives a basic description of a movement that is central to the discussion that follows. Well, yeah, the underlying portion provides an overview of postmodern architecture, and that's the main topic of the passage. So I guess that's true. Let's keep B. To see it clarifies a concept that the author implies was unclear in the studies mentioned in the text. Well, the passage doesn't say that postmodernism was unclear or misunderstood. It doesn't say that, so we can eliminate choice C. It introduces a method of architectural analysis that is discussed in greater detail later in the text. The underlying part defines a movement. It doesn't talk about a method, like nothing about the method here. That's why choice D is also wrong, and the best choice here is choice B. So yep. Always, before looking at the answer choices, you can ask yourself questions. What was that underlying portion was about, and it's gonna help you choose the answer. And the other thing that I see not many people think about is how does this underlying parts connect to the rest of the passage? Like connecting those dots is also something that is important. And in this case, it provides a background for the studies of scholars, right? Yep. Now let's move on to the next question type, which is quotation questions. Sometimes these questions are a little hard, and it's really important for us to practice on this question as well. So here's the question that I've created, and it asks for the claim which should illustrate the claim. Okay. So now let's read the short passage. The diversity of trees is a 2015 botanic study by Dr. Someone. In one section, that person discusses how certain tree species are more adaptable to climate change than others, emphasizing that some species thrive in various environmental conditions while others struggle. She writes, here we have a blank. Uh, so it says some tree species are adaptable to climate change than other tree species. So the correct answer choice should illustrate this idea, right? Meaning it should describe tree species that could thrive even though there are environmental challenges like climate, like environmental conditions. For example, it could be climate change as well. So now let's move on to choices. The towering of redwoods of California, once dominant, now facing growing threats from rising temperatures and prolonged droughts. This talks about trees struggling with climate change, but the claim isn't about species that adapt. But like what we want is the claim that should say species should adapt well to change. That is the claim that should be added. That's why choice A is wrong because it doesn't include that part. It doesn't say there are some species that adapt well to change as well. So that's why A is wrong. Choice B, the resilient sycamore capable of withstanding both urban pollution and seasonal flooding continues to flourish in diverse landscapes. Yeah, this supports the idea that some tree species are more adaptable than others because it describes how this uh, sycamores survive in those challenging conditions. That's why B is the correct answer choice. Choice C, the ancient ginkgo, a relic from the time of the dinosaurs, stands as a testament to the endurance of certain tree species. Well, it talks about species surviving for a long time, but it doesn't directly discuss its adaptability. It doesn't say it adapts well or not. That's why C is right. Choose D. Beneath the shifting canopy, trees compete for sunlight, their branches stretching towards the sky in an endless struggle for survival. Well, this is a very general statement about tree growth and competition, and there's nothing about adaptation to climate change. That's why D is also wrong. So the best choice here is choice B because it mentions a tree that could withstand pollution and flooding, which shows adaptability to climate change. So that's the best choice here. Now let's move on to the next question type, which is support and weaken. So here we have a question. Which finding, if true, would most directly supports the conclusion? Okay, so now let's read the text. So here we have something which is a widely cultivated species known for its sensitivity to climate temperature changes. As global temperatures rise, researchers are investigating how shifting climate patterns impact grape ripening and harvest timing. So they're researching how that climate change could affect two things. First one, grape ripening and harvest time, the second one. One hypothesis suggests that warmer autumn temperatures extend the growing season, potentially leading to higher sugar content in grapes and earlier harvest. To evaluate this claim, here we have viticulturists. They monitored vines across multiple vineyards for several years, concluding that here we have a conclusion. Grapevines benefit from extended warmth in the fall, resulting in earlier ripening. So the passage says that warmer autumn help those grapevines ripen earlier. So that's the main thing, right? Which results in earlier ripening. Now we can move on to answer choices. Choice A. Although grapevines in cooler regions also showed some increase in sugar content in years with warmer autumns, the increase was much greater in vineyards located in traditionally warm climates. Well, yeah, this seems correct because it says warmer autumns lead to more ripening and also shows sugar content, which affects ripening increases, especially in warm regions. So let's keep A for now. Choice B. Although significant year-to-year variations in temperature were recorded during the study, no noticeable trend in harvest timing was observed across the vineyards monitored. If no trend in harvest timing was observed, then it contradicts the conclusion of researchers. That's why B is wrong. Choice C, although grapevines in warm temperatures ripen it earlier on average, those grown in higher altitudes ripened later than those in lower altitude regions regardless of temperature patterns. Well, this choice introduces altitude as a factor which will affect. Well, there was nothing about altitude in the passage. That's why we can eliminate choice C as well. Choice Z, although grapevines in years with warmer autumns tended to produce more fruit overall, those years also had unusually cool springs, making it unclear whether autumn warmth alone was responsible for early ripening. This choice raises some doubts about whether Ottoman worms is the sole cause, and it's literally gonna weaken our conclusion. And we don't want that, right? That's why D is wrong. And the best choice here is choice A. And always look for an answer that literally tells you direct evidence of this trend, of this conclusion here. So yep, next step we have text completion question type. So here we have a question. You can pause the video right now and solve it on your own first. And so this question asks for completing the text. Let's read the text now. The eastern halberd is the largest species in North America and a key indicator of freshwater ecosystem health. Due to habitat destruction and water pollution, populations have declined significantly. So that's an important thing. Population have declined. Conservation biologists Dr. Rachel Simmons and her team tested whether a method called head starting raising juveniles in captivity before releasing them into the wild could improve survival rates. Working in two river systems, they released both juveniles and wild-born juveniles to compare survival rates. Simmons and her team found that head-started individuals showed a much higher survival rate than did wild-born juveniles, suggesting that, like, so the passage suggests that head starting increases survival rates. So that head starting is the method, as you saw in this text, and it just improves survival rate. And the correct answer to show that choice A. Providing young individuals with a controlled environment before releasing may allow them to develop stronger survival skills that help them persist in the wild. Yeah, it supports that idea, which is head starting improves survival and says stronger survival skills. Yep. So I guess we can keep choice A for now. Choice B, salamanders that grow in polluted environments are inherently less likely to survive to adulthood than those in pristine habitats. Well, this discusses pollution, but the experiment focuses on head starting, not environmental conditions here. That's why B is wrong. Choice C, head starting is more likely to improve survival rates for river dwelling species than for land dwelling species. Well, the passage never compares river dwelling versus land dwelling species. That's why choice C is also wrong. Choice D, some amphibians naturally experience high mortality rates in the wild regardless of conservation efforts. Well, this weakens the conclusion by implying conservation efforts won't help. And we don't want that, right? We don't want to weaken our conclusion. That's why D is also wrong. And the best choice here is choice A. I'm about to show you simple yet insanely powerful strategies to master the digital SAT reading section. Once you learn how to do this in these 3 easy steps, it's gonna skyrocket your accuracy, boost your confidence, and finally get you the score that you need. And this is the exact same strategy that has helped hundreds of students crush the SAT. So let's jump right into it. For you to get a high SAT score, you definitely need to improve your reading score. And improving your reading score leads to so many opportunities, like higher total SAT score equals better college options. A strong SAT reading score can really boost your overall SAT performance, and that will make you a stronger applicant than so many students. And you can also get bigger scholarship opportunities. And you can also improve your reading skills, and you can understand faster, and you can be way more effective when you're reading and when you're processing complex information. Next up, you can also improve your critical thinking and comprehension by improving your reading score. So, and you have a question, but how do you actually improve your SAT reading score? And there are mainly 2 ways of improving it. So the first way is by mastering implicit meaning and author's purpose. And this is really powerful skill that you need to have in order to crush the SAT reading section. And the next step, you need the right strategies. And in this video, we will cover both of these, and I've prepared SAT questions that I've created, and I will show you so many strategies that you will need. And I will also tell you how to master implicit meaning and how to identify the purpose of the author. But firstly, let me tell you, your SAT reading journey looks like this. You watch your favorite SAT tutor's guaranteed 1620 plus SAT score masterclass video. You spend 3 hours trying to use a vague skimming and scanning strategy that they gave you to answer a single passage. And you check your answers with the College Board explanations, but half of them make no sense. You take a much deserved break to watch some random YouTube videos or maybe videos on Instagram. And a week later, you see a Reddit post of a student flexing the 1580 SAT score and the acceptance to Harvard. And you suddenly remember your SAT reading practice. So you say, this is time to lock in, right? And you review your old mistakes and answers, and you actually recognize some of those questions. And you're about to be a reading genius. You start telling your friends, family, that this is the time you will finally break through SAT reading. You're already a master of the SAT, right? All you need now is just practice a little more. And you look up an advanced SAT reading strategy video from your favorite tutor. And you start using those overhyped tricks to skyrocket your score. And you practice for maybe a day. Absolute crickets. Your score barely moves. You kinda give up, and then you stumble across another tutor's video promising secret SAT reading hack no one talks about. You try, and still struggling. You pretty much give up on SAT reading. It's just not fair. The test takers should be rewarding your random guessing strategies. They should be handing out free 700 plus scores in the SAT English section, right? That was a joke. So the real problem is that you haven't mastered implicit meaning and the purpose of the author. And the second real problem is that you're not using the right strategies for the SAT. So firstly, let's master implicit meaning and author's purpose. So firstly, in order to master it, you need to understand tone and attitudes, which is why the author feels a certain way. Secondly, you need to understand underlying assumptions. These are hidden messages in the text. Next up, we will cover contrast and shift words. It's usually where the arguments changes its direction. Now let's first start off with tone and attitude. Why the author feels a certain way. So firstly, the first really powerful strategy that if you start implementing this, you will see so much growth, which is finding the adjectives and adverbs. If the author says, this discovery was remarkable and groundbreaking, their tone is enthusiastic. And if they say, this theory is questionable and unconvincing, the tone is skeptical. It may seem a little too easy, but we will move on even to so advanced and really powerful strategies as well. Next up, the second thing that you have to look at is looking at the verbs. Ask yourself, if the author challenges an idea, that means they're skeptical. And if they praise something, they're supportive. Next up, you need to analyze the opening and closing lines. Usually, I'm not saying all the time, but usually the introduction often hints at tone, and the conclusion reinforces it. There's also something final to know about tone and attitude that so many students get wrong, which is tone questions have subtle traps. A lot of students think that optimistic and hopeful are the same things, right? When you think about it, it kind of seems they're the same thing. But actually, they are completely different stuff. Optimistic is confident, and hopeful suggests uncertainty. And that's an important thing you need to understand. Now let's move on to the second part, which is underlying assumptions, which are hidden messages in the passage. Ask yourself, what must be true for this argument to work? If an author argues that banning cars will reduce pollution, there is the hidden assumption there, which is cars are a major cause of pollution. Also, look for gaps in logic. Usually in the text, if the author says more money in education leads to smarter students, the assumption is that funding is the main factor affecting intelligence, and that it's kind of looking for that logic in the text. Next up, identify cause and effect claims. If an author argues that watching TV causes laziness, that means that they assume TV is the main reason for laziness. Next up, contrast and shift words, and that's where the argument changes its direction. So firstly, the most easy and basic way of doing it is by spotting but and however. So that's the easiest part of it. And these words signal an important shift in the argument, and it usually kind of leads to the main idea. Next up, you can look for cause and effect shifts. And those can be as a result, thus, therefore, and those words, and those phrases or linking words indicate conclusions from those previous arguments in the passage. Sometimes a shift is subtle or delayed. If the contrast isn't immediately after, however, you need to read one more sentence for full clarity. Sometimes it's not usually going to be as clearly shown like this. Now let's look at some SAT reading questions in order to apply the right strategies, and I will also show those strategies after analyzing these questions. So the first one, we have two texts. And now let's read the question. Based on the text, how will the author of text 1 would most likely respond to the claim about benefits of that research in text 2? Okay, that is interesting. So now let's read both of the texts. The classification of ancient written scripts has long been debated. So there was a debate. While some scholars argue that grouping them into broad linguistic families is usable, others claim that such classifications can be overly simplistic and fail to account for the complexities of the language evolution. As linguists argue in their study, the relationships between scripts may be better understood through their functional use rather than linguistic lineage. So, text 1 argues that classifying those ancient scripts by linguistic family can be misleading, and that functional use is a better way to analyze them. So if we now know the meaning of text 1, now let's move on to text 2. The Indus script found in the ruins of ancient Indus Valley civilization remains undeciphered. Some researchers believe that computational analysis could reveal patterns in the script that suggest it represents a true language rather than a set of symbolic or religious marks. By applying the statistical methods similar to those used in deciphering the Mayan scripts, researcher and his team aim to categorize recurrent patterns, potentially leading to the breakthroughs in script classification. So text 2 kind of describes how those computational analysis might help to classify. It also kind of understands the Indus script as well, and it says there are patterns, so in short, text 2 says such classifications are useful. Whereas in text 1, it says that classifications based on linguistic family is misleading and functional use is a better way. That's what text wants. Now let's kind of try to predict. I believe that text 2, the author would say or would argue that function is a more effective way to study those scripts. Now let's look at answer choices. Choice A, by suggesting that future research may provide substantial advancements in the field of computational script analysis. Well, text one questions classification itself rather than arguing for better research methods, so that's why A is wrong. Choice B, by asserting that classifying ancient scripts based on linguistic lineage may not be the most effective approach. I believe this is the right answer because text one's argument directly states that classification by line age is too simplistic. So I guess B is the right answer. But still, let's have a look at other choices. C, by arguing that some scripts are more easily deciphered using computational methods than others. Well, text one doesn't even discuss differences in how scripts are deciphered. That's why choice C is wrong. Choice D, by emphasizing that written symbols do not always represent full linguistic systems. Well, this may be a valid linguistic idea, but text one does not focus on whether those symbols are a part of a full language. That's why choice D is also wrong. Now, here are three strategies that are so powerful, and make sure to use those strategies in so many SAT questions. So the first strategy here is applying the principle of scientific skepticism. And you may be thinking, what does that even mean? Well, SAT questions often test your critical thinking skills as well. So one passage may challenge the assumptions of another passage. If one text questions classification methods, the correct answer will likely emphasize why classification is flawed rather than suggesting improvements. Next up, use logical inference chains. For example, if text 1 argues against classification in general and text 2 supports classification with a new methods, then that means that text 1's author wouldn't suddenly approve of a new method. They would likely still disagree. And then next up, you have the third strategy, which is identifying the competing hypotheses trap. Usually, wrong answer choices often introduce competing but sometimes unrelated hypotheses like ease of deciphering in this case. And in order to avoid being trapped, you have to ask yourself, does this choice match the main argument, or is it a related but wrong answer choice? Now let's move on to the next SAT question. And it is text completion question type. Now let's try and answer this question. So the first thing, we need the question, which choice most logically complete the text? Okay. So now let's read the text. Certain similarities in listeners, the brain wave patterns corresponded to the structural similarities between genres, suggesting a neurological basis for musical perception. This was observed for both jazz and electronic music, but was especially pronounced in listeners' responses to classical compositions, which can be seen in the heightened activation of the prefrontal cortex, an area linked to complex auditory processing. A different study found that those classical music evokes similar neural responses, suggesting that's blank. So we need to logically complete the text. Firstly, let's talk about the passage. The passage tells that musical genres with structural similarities evoke similar neural responses, and classical music, especially here, as you can see, classical music triggers similar brain activities. That's what it means. Now let's move on to selecting answer choices. Choice A, that similarities with respect to that response could result from a shaped aspect of the musical structure. I believe this is the right answer because this directly connects to the finding of that idea that the similarity in neural activity is because of structural commonalities. As you can see here, it's because of structural similarities or commonalities. And choice A directly supports that. Choice B, individual listeners of Baroque music likely exhibit higher prefrontal cortex activation than listeners of romantic music. Well, the passage doesn't compare the strengths of the response between the two genres, so that's why B is the wrong answer choice. Choice C, Baroque and romantic music elicit a stronger neurological response than most other music genres. Well, the passage doesn't even claim that how strong the response is compared to all other genres. That's why she's wrong. Choice D, the two genres will likely become less structurally similar over time. Well, this passage is just about current neurological responses. It doesn't even predict future changes in musical genres, so that's why D is also wrong. So as you can see, there are two strategies that are really important, which are using the cause and effect continuity rule. And this strategy is so powerful, and you can actually use it in almost every SAT reading question. And for example, the passage might set up a cause. In this case, it's similar structure. And then there could be an effect, which is similar neural responses. And the correct answer should reinforce this cause and effect link, and it should not introduce a new or unrelated idea. Next up, the next strategy is identifying scientific assumptions. Well, the passage in this case assumes that structural similarities in music lead to neural similarities, and the best answer should directly support this assumption rather than challenging it. So that's also an important strategy that we need to know. Now that you know the right strategies and you know how to identify the purpose of the author and you've mastered the implicit meaning, if you still make mistakes that are ruining your score, well, all of these statements are useless. So make sure to check out this video where I shared top 5 biggest mistakes that are hurting your score. I used to think that scoring high on the SAT was just about studying more, grinding through endless SAT practice questions, memorizing lots of formulas, and memorizing so many vocabulary words. If you apply the right strategies, your score increases. And if you don't use those strategies, you will stay stuck. And it's that simple. So in this video, as you can see in this whiteboard, I will share 5 really powerful strategies, and each one is so important if you're taking the March SAT. So let's get into it. So here we have strategy number 1, and it's called what versus so what methods, and it is so powerful. And firstly, I will give you the SAT question that I've created, and then I will show you how this strategy is applied in this specific question, and I will show you how you can use this exact same strategy on other SAT questions. So let's look at this SAT question. So let's start reading this. So it asks for the main idea of the text. Now let's read it. The proliferation of digital consumption, okay, regarding conventional print literature versus emergent electronic media. So they are comparing two things. The first one is conventional print literature, and the second one is emergent electronic media. So while those traditional books, they are for textual engagements, digital alternatives such as ebooks, audiobooks, and hyperlinked articles have introduced a shift in cognitive retention and accessibility. So it says the benefits of both of these methods, both traditional ones and digital ones. So now they're saying what researchers posit. And what those researchers think is integrating both of those, both print and digital formats, will help them for comprehension and recall. Yep. And it says there is an increase in retention rates. Yeah. Now, the main idea, in order to predict this question, this strategy, which is what versus so what method is going to help us to predict it. So the first step is after reading a passage, ask yourself these two questions. So the first question here is, what is the passage talking about? So in this case, you have to find the topic. And in this passage, it was print versus digital media. And then the next question that you want to ask yourself is, so what's the big takeaway? In this case, which is main idea, is using both print and digital formats together improves comprehension. So using both is really good. Now we can go to the answer choices and choose the right answer. Choice A. The transition from print to digital media signifies an inevitable of conventional books. Okay. So inevitable is a very extreme word, and I don't really like it. And as well, in addition to that, there's no kind of a transition from print to digital media, and the passage says we have to integrate both. That's why choice A is wrong. Now let's have a look at choice B. Digital consumption modalities have redefined the cognitive processes associated with textual engagement. Nothing about redefining those processes. So that's why choice B is wrong. A hybrid approach integrating print and digital media fosters superior comprehension and retention. And that's exactly what we predicted, and that's the correct answer to it. Now let's have a look at choice D. Audiobooks and ebooks have demonstrably surpassed traditional reading in terms of cognitive efficiency. No, we can't say that because the passage's conclusion is that we have to integrate both. And in this case, they're saying digital formats are better. No, it's not. So D is also wrong. So the best choice here is choice C. Now, let's move on to the next strategy. Strategy number 2. And it's so powerful. If you use it right, I'm sure you can ace your March SAT or whatever exam you were taking. So it has to do all about extreme words. And knowing these words is going to help you to eliminate answer choices really quickly. And if you can spot those, it's going to be so easy. And but I can't guarantee that every single answer choice that uses those extreme words is incorrect. In 99%, in 98% of the times, those answer choices are going to be wrong that include an extreme word. But sometimes if the passage actually says that, then it might also be true. So I've actually went ahead and collected all those extreme words that you should be aware of. And I found 3 main patterns. So the first type of extreme words is absolute words. And those things include like always, never, completely, forever, all, everyone. And I highly recommend you to be aware of these things, to be aware of these words. And the next type is exaggerated or overgeneralized words. For example, those words can include inevitably, definitely, definitively, undoubtedly, universally, unstoppable. And those words are exaggerated or overgeneralized words. And the next category is comparative versus superlative traps. Best, worst, least, greatest, ultimate, perfect, impossible, no chance. So I highly recommend you to know these. And I've actually got a PDF in the description below if you want to access to these. And now let's move on to the next strategy. Strategy number 3. And it's also really, really powerful. And if you know how to use it well, you can ace your exam. So let's start off. So it's all about understanding percentage increases. And a lot of the times on the FAT, in many of the exams, there are always questions related to percentages. So it's really important to understand this strategy. So firstly, before telling you how the strategy works, I want to show you the SAT question that will illustrate how it's used. The result of increasing the quantity X by 200% is 21. What's the value of X? So in this case, we've got a quantity, which is X, and this is like 100%. And if we have to add 200% of that, that would be 200%. That would be 2x. Let me fix that. Yep. 2x. And if we add both, because it's being increased, that would be 3x. 3x equals 21, and x equals 7. So here we found the right answer. So the best choice is B, 7. And here's a trap. D is a trap because they are using the same number as you can see here. So yeah, make sure that you're not gonna be rushing. So the main strategy here is understanding percentage increases. So here are 3 examples of them. 100% increase is doubling the original number. 200% increase is tripling the original number. And 300% increase is quadrupling, and so on and so forth. So here, this was the strategy number 3. And now let's move on to the next strategy number 4. And that is knowing these March SAT predictions. And the link to the PDF of like literally 100% free 12-page worksheet of those SAT English predictions is in the description below, and you can get access to it completely for free. So now let's move on to the last and most important strategy of all, and it's the one that is way more powerful than all these first 4 strategies. And if you know this one, I'm sure it's gonna be easy. And that strategy or tip, you could say, is avoiding choices that assume too much. Before you click off this video, I want to say that this one is so tricky, and sometimes you may not even realize that you are assuming. That's why you literally have to pay attention to this SAT question that is on the screen right now. And let's have a look at this one. Which choice best describes the function of the 2 underlined portions in the text as a whole? So as you can see, you have a short 4-line poem, and you've got a multiple choice question, and which asks us about the function of those 2 underlined portions. The first one is autumn and leaves, and the second one is my memories drift. So firstly, let's understand what this poem is about. So it's like a story, right? We've got a windy autumn day, and there are leaves. They're swirling all over the place. So that means they have no control. They just move wherever they want. The wind pushes them wherever the wind pushes them. And you could think about memories as well here. So yes, they're kind of comparing those 2 things. And memories are also the ones that we don't really control. And just like those leaves in the wind, our thoughts, our memory drift around chaotically. So I guess the first underlined part, which is leaves, is kind of physical object. And the next second underlined part, which is memories, is abstract thing. So I guess the poem here is making a comparison between those first physical and abstract objects. So now let's go through the answer choices. Choice A. The poem isn't about time passing. It's about how memories move like let's look at choices. They contrast two perspectives, one external, one internal, on the passage of time. Well, this poem isn't about time passing, and it's about how memories move like those leaves. So this is wrong. Choice B, they provide examples, one natural, one psychological, of a force beyond control. So this one is so tricky, and it's almost correct because both winds and our memories are out of control. But it does examples, and the point isn't just listing those examples. It's making kind of a comparison, or we can also say that as a metaphor, maybe. Now, choice C, they describe the subjects, one tangible and one intangible, of a metaphor that extends throughout the poem. Yes. So the leaves here are tangible, and the memories here are intangible. And the poem, the poet compares them through very extended metaphor here. So I guess that's a perfect match. Now let's look at choice D. They symbolize two different experiences, one painful and one nostalgic, that the speakers revisits in the poem. Well, the poem never says that one is painful and the other is nostalgic, so that's an assumption, I believe. So as you can see, I believe the best choice here is choice C. And now here's our strategy, which is assuming it looks like this. The SAT only asks about what is actually in the text, not what you think might be true. For example, in this case, in choice A, passage of time would be something that students might think, right? Because memories drift is kind of related to passage of time, but it's something that we're assuming. And even in choice D, you're kind of assuming that one is painful or the other is nostalgic. So that's the thing that you want to look out for. And if you truly want to get a very high SAT score on your upcoming exam, then I believe that you need way more strategies, way more practice questions so that you can nail your exam. And in this playlist right here, you can get access to so many tips, strategies, hacks that you need to get your dream SAT score on your next exam. After working with hundreds of SAT test takers, I've discovered something really crazy. 5 major SAT mistakes that are keeping you stuck at a very low score. And they're not usual tips like study more or do more practice questions. They are the real reasons why your score isn't improving. In this video, I will show you exactly what these mistakes are and how to fix them. Let's get into it. So in this whiteboard, as you can see, there are 5 major mistakes that are keeping you stuck. So let's get started with mistake number 1, which is getting tricked by a partial match. In this case, I will give you an SAT question like this, and I will show you how the College Board is trying to give a trap. So in this question, let's read it. So which choice best states the main idea of the text? So it's asking about the main idea. Now let's read the text. The Metropolitan Museum of Art curates a vast collection that spans thousands of years, showcasing works from diverse cultures and time periods. So the most important words here are vast collection and diverse cultures and time periods. Some of its exhibits highlights the masterpieces of renowned artists such as Leonardo da Vinci and that person drawing large crowds. So it's saying those exhibits highlights those very famous artists. However, so here we have a change in our text. The museum also dedicates significant space to lesser known artists. So lesser known, so they're contrasting, saying that they not only show those very famous artists, but they also show less famous artists, including those from underrepresented communities whose works provide a unique perspective on historical and cultural narratives. So our prediction is that they exhibit not only famous ones, but also those who are lesser known. Now let's go to choices. Choice A, the Metropolitan Museum of Arts exhibits featuring Leonardo da Vinci attract significantly more visitors than those showcasing lesser-known artists. There's nothing about the number of visitors in this text, so that's why choice A is wrong. Choice B, the Metropolitan Museum of Art showcases both famous and lesser-known artists to highlight the universal power of artistic expression. Yes, it focuses on famous and lesser-known artists, so let's keep this choice. Choice C, the museum exhibits featuring lesser-known artists focus more on historical narratives than on art techniques. So this choice is wrong because there is no comparison between historical narratives and artistic techniques. It's very detailed thing. It's too specific, and it cannot be the main idea of the text. And in addition to that, this wrong answer choice includes real words from the passage, but with a twist. And for choice A and C here includes real words from the passage, like historical narratives. Let me show you the same exact word, historical narratives. So it's using the exact same phrase, but it adds a misleading comparison, more on historical narratives than artistic techniques. So make sure that you don't fall for it. And that's why choice C is wrong. Now let's have a look at choice D. The Metropolitan Museum of Art originally displayed only famous European artists, but has since expanded to include artists from various backgrounds. There's nothing about European artists, so we can eliminate this choice. So the best choice here is choice B. So as you can see, that's the mistake, which is getting tricked by a partial match. Some sort of phrase is used from the passage. It does not mean that that is the correct answer. Now let's move on to mistake number 2, which is choosing an answer that is true but not the best supports. Now let me show you through a real SAT questions I created. So which choice, if true, would most directly supports the analyst's claim? A leading online retailer recently introduced a chatbot designed to enhance customer interactions by offering instant responses to inquiries. So it's a chatbot, and it will give you responses instantly within seconds. Initially, some company executives worried that customers who engaged with the chatbot would feel less inclined to reach out to human representatives, reducing overall engagement with the company. However, so here we have a shift, contrast. Company analysts report that their survey data shows these concerns were unwarranted. So they first thought that if we have a chatbot, then people will not be inclined to reach out to humans. But that is actually not true. Instead, I believe my prediction is that it's actually increases the overall engagement with the company. Now let's look at choices. Choice A, most surveyed customers who contacted the company indicated they were unaware of the chatbot before their first interaction. This is not something that is stated, and we don't really care whether they were aware of that chatbot before or after the first interaction. That's why choice A is wrong. Also, yep, so now let's look at choice B. Most surveyed customers who contacted the company indicated that they primarily sought help with complex issues requiring human assistance. Well, there's nothing about complex or simple issues. That's why we can eliminate choice B. Many surveyed customers who contacted the company indicated that the chatbot helped them feel more comfortable reaching out to human representatives. Yes, that's the exact same thing that the passage says. It increases overall engagement. And engagement could be feeling more comfortable reaching out to human representatives of that company. So yes, that's the best choice here. Choice C is the answer, but still, let's have a look at choice D and prove why D is also wrong. Many surveyed customers who contacted the company indicated they would likely use the chatbot again to review their past interactions. I mean, the part that is kind of a little bit off is reviewing their past interactions, and it's not something that is related. Uh, that's why choice D is also wrong. And in this case, the mistake that a ton of students make is picking an answer that seems factually reasonable, but it doesn't directly prove the claim. As an example, many students take choice D. This choice D. And the reason why it's wrong is because this shows that users like the chatbot, but it doesn't prove whether chatbot use increases or maintains that human engagement. It has nothing to do with increased engagements. That's why it should directly connect to the claim. So now let's move on to mistake number 3. And this one is also so powerful that so many students unintentionally make this mistake. And that mistake is falling for that's a linking work as a paraphrase trap. And let me show you how it's used. The historical, which is a temple in Athens, has withstood numerous earthquakes over centuries due to its unique construction techniques. In 2020, researchers examined how similar techniques were used in Japan's temple, which has survived over 1,300 years despite frequent seismic activity. And now the next sentence talks about the interlocking wooden joints in that temple allow the structure to flex and absorb earthquake forces without collapsing. So the first sentence talks about those earthquake-resistant techniques, and the next sentence talks about that new temple, that temple in Japan, and its similar technique. And I believe that the missing transition must show how the second sentence relates to the first. So now let's analyze each option logically. Choice A, furthermore. It adds a new and additional points, but this is not just an extra detail. It explains something that is very specific, so we can eliminate this choice. Meanwhile suggests two things happening at the same time. But this isn't a timeline comparison, so we can eliminate this choice as well. That is kind of clarifies or restates something. But the second sentence is not a restatement. It's an example. So now we can eliminate this choice as well. For example, introduces a specific illustration of a very general idea, which is exactly what the second sentence here does. That's why choice D is the correct answer choice. Let me explain you that mistake. If the second sentence rewords or re-explains the first one, that would be correct. But in this case, as you saw, it's not a paraphrase, it's a specific example. Now let's move on to the next mistake. Mistake number 4. And that is picking an answer that appears in only one passage, and it's related to texts. And let's solve this question in order to understand what that mistake is and how we can fix it. Based on the text, both authors would most likely agree with which statements? So let's read text 1. Urban planners working on stream restoration project emphasized the importance of maintaining natural vegetation along riverbanks. This vegetation not only prevents erosion but also supports wildlife and improves water quality. Many cities are now prioritizing the planting of native vegetation in their urban stream restoration efforts to counteract the effects of past urbanization. So they were talking about natural vegetation being good, and it's listing some of its benefits. Now let's read text 2. Ecologists studying urban streams have found that restoring natural vegetation along the riverbanks plays a crucial role in stabilizing ecosystems. The presence of native plants reduces erosion, filters pollutants, and provides habitat for fish and other aquatic species. As a result, many urban restoration projects focus on reintroducing these plants as a key part of their strategy. So the text 2 also says that natural vegetation is good, right? Telling some even more benefits of it. Now let's read the choices. Cities often struggle to maintain native vegetation in urban stream restoration projects. And there's nothing about struggling. So A is wrong because of that. Choice B, native vegetation is essential for protecting and improving urban streams. Yes, that sounds the right answer, so let's keep it. Choice C, urban planners focus more on reducing pollution than restoring natural vegetation. There's no comparison here, so that's why choice C is wrong. The role of native vegetation in urban ecosystems is widely debated among experts. There's no debate in both of these texts, so D is also wrong. And as you can see, choice B is the best answer choice here. So choice A mentions a struggling to maintain vegetation, but this is not discussed in both texts, only choosing. That's why my recommendation is to choose an answer that both authors agree on. Now let's move on to mistake number 5, which is not knowing the right strategies. If you really want to get a high score on the SAT, then I believe that you should know way more strategies. And in this playlist right here, I dive into so many strategies that you will need for different type of question types on the SAT. So make sure to watch that video. Only 20 hours to the SAT, and you can still crush it. I've helped over 100 students from 25 countries improve their SAT scores, and trust me, I've seen what works even at the last minute. First, I will dive into 3 mental prep tips that will keep you calm and laser focused when it matters most. And finally, I will reveal 3 crucial things you must do the day before the exam to walk in confident and ready. Don't skip any part of this. You will see why as we go. It's the night before the SAT, and let's be real. Your mind is probably racing. Did I study enough? What if I blank out? What if I can't sleep? And here's the thing, your brain has already done the hard work, and now it's time to trust it. But if you let stress and anxiety take over, even the best prep can go to waste. First step, mindfulness. This one is so powerful. When test anxiety hits, it can feel like your brain is spiraling out of control. To stop that spiral, I highly recommend you to try these things. Sit somewhere quiet. Breathe in deeply through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold your breath and exhale slowly through your mouth for 8 seconds. Repeat this for just 2 minutes. It lowers your heart rate, calms your nervous system, and brings you back into the present. And here's the bonus. Combine this with mindfulness. Focus on something tangible like the sound of your breath or the feel of your feet on the ground. It's like hitting a mental reset button. But remember, this is just the first step. To truly boost your confidence, you will need the next technique. This is the secret weapon Olympic athletes use before competitions, and it works wonders for test takers too. Here's how to do it. Close your eyes and imagine yourself walking into the test center. Picture yourself sitting down, flipping through the test booklets, and answering questions with ease. Feel the confidence? See yourself finishing the test and walking out, knowing you gave it your all. Why does this work? Because your brain can't always tell the difference between imagination and reality. The more you visualize success, the more your mind believes it's possible. And if that sounds too good to be true, just wait until you hear the next tip, because this one is a game changer for managing your stress long term. And here's the truth, the SAT is just one test. Yes, it's important, but it doesn't define your future. Putting too much pressure on yourself to be perfect can actually hurt your performance. Instead, set realistic expectations. Aim to do your best, not to be perfect. Focus on the effort you've put in rather than the outcome. And here's a little perspective for you. Even if you don't crush it this time, there are always more opportunities to retake it or shine in other areas. When you keep that in mind, you will find it much easier to stay calm and give your best performance tomorrow. It's the night before the SAT and you're so close to the finish line. But let's face it, what you do today could make or break your performance tomorrow. The question is, how do you make sure you're walking into that test center feeling prepared, confident, and ready to crush it? I'm about to share 3 things you must do today to set yourself up for success. And let me tell you, most students miss at least one of them, and it costs them points they could have easily earned. But here's the deal. If you don't stick around to the end, you will miss the one thing that could completely derail your test day. Let's get into it. First step, stop cramming. I get it. The temptation is real. You're thinking, if I just learn one more formula or memorize one more word list, I will be ready. But I'm gonna be really honest with you. Cramming doesn't stick. In fact, it can overload your brain and leave you feeling more stressed. Instead, spend 30 minutes doing a light review. Go over the key strategies you've practiced, review a few practice problems you've already done to reinforce confidence. Maybe flip through a few flashcards, but only if they are familiar. Then stop. Close the books. Your goal today isn't to learn something new. It's to solidify what you already know. And trust me, this is just step 1. What you do tonight is just as important as what you do during the test tomorrow. Next one, sleep. Now, before you think, I know this already, I've heard it a million times, hear me out. It's not about hearing these obvious points, it's about understanding them and knowing how to apply them in the most effective way possible. And let me tell you something. Most of the success on the SAT comes from repeating the basics, not trying to chase some flashy secret method. But for whatever reason, people still don't do it. So what's the secret? It's having someone explain it to you in a logical and structured manner. Someone who doesn't just say do this or do that, but shows you the why and the how, so you can start seeing real progress. So when you sleep, your brain organizes all the information you've been cramming into it for the past few weeks. Without enough rest, your ability to recall information and focus will really drop. Here's what to do. Set an alarm for a consistent wake-up time. Avoid screens for at least 30 minutes before bed to help your brain wind down. And don't forget, sleep is about quality, not just quantity. Aim for 7 to 10 hours of solid rest. And here's a quick tip. If nerves are keeping you awake, try the breathing exercise I shared earlier. It works wonders for calming your mind. But even if you get the perfect night's sleep, one mistake in tomorrow's prep could throw everything off. That's why this next step is so crucial. The last thing you want is to wake up tomorrow and realize you forgot something really important. So that's why I've prepared a checklist for you. Your ID and SAT admission ticket, a calculator, and make sure it's approved one. Pencils, at least 2 sharpened ones. Snacks and water to keep your energy up during the breaks. And plan a solid breakfast. Nothing too heavy, but something filling. Think eggs, oatmeal, or fruit. And because you've been watching so far, I have a bonus tip for you. Lay out your clothes the night before so you're not rushing in the morning. Double check everything tonight and I promise you, you will feel so much more in control tomorrow. Imagine how much your SAT score could improve if you had access to all the best secrets in one place. Click on this playlist right here, Digital SAT Tips, where I've shared advanced strategies that have helped students increase their SAT scores.